Hello everyone, and welcome to this EDMO training, getting the most of your media literacy campaign. So I think I can hand over to Sally. Sally Reynolds is coordinating the EDMO media literacy work and is also a member of the EDMO executive board. And Sally, I hand over to you to introduce our trainers and the session. Thank you.
It's really a great pleasure to be moderating this training session this afternoon on such a happy subject, the subject of successful media literacy campaigns, because we still feel ourselves to be very much a fragmented world in media literacy in Europe, but we have some great examples of really effective and successful campaigns, and we're going to feature two of them here this afternoon for you. So without further ado, I'd like to go to our first campaign this afternoon, and so I'd like to introduce the speakers. So first of all, it's my great pleasure to introduce Eileen Culloty from Dublin City University, EDMO Ireland. Eileen is an assistant professor in the School of Communications. She's also Deputy Director of the Institute of Media, Democracy and Society. Eileen coordinates the Ireland Hub for the European Digital Media Observatory, and she's also Vice Chair of Media Literacy Ireland. So Eileen, you're going to start off to talk about the successful campaign in autumn of this year. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. And I hope you can all see my screen okay. Yes. I'm going to start the presentation, and then I'll pass over to my colleague Martina, who's the National Coordinator of Media Literacy Ireland. And Media Literacy Ireland is really central to all of this, because it was set up by the media regulator. It's facilitated by the media regulator to bring together all the different bodies and stakeholders in Ireland that have an interest in promoting media literacy. So that multi-stakeholder component is really important. So some members are news media, some members are representing the platforms, but also librarians, school libraries, various charities that might be working with older people, and so on. And it's really that network that created the infrastructure for this whole campaign. I'm going to give you an introduction to maybe the early years of our Be Media Smart campaign, and then Martina will explain what has just happened in the past year and maybe where it might go forward. And the EDMO connection is that, as many of you know, EDMO has a strand that is dedicated to media literacy, but it made sense for us in EDMO to have a strategic relationship with Media Literacy Ireland. So we kind of conceived that we would do media literacy work, but we would do it with Media Literacy Ireland, because otherwise you would be reinventing the wheel. So in 2019, the Be Media Smart campaign was first developed. It was developed in a very short period of time and in response to the inauguration of European Media Literacy Week. So it was basically a question of what could be done for that. And the campaign was initially piloted in 2019. So it started by tapping into that network of people that were coming forward and saying, we're interested in media literacy. We have some stake in media literacy. And that could be the public service broadcaster, which has a remit in the area of media literacy. It could be a body that represents newspapers and news brands, because they see news literacy as their key interest, or librarians, or information literacy, and so on. So simply by getting people together in the room to see what could be done. The public broadcaster very helpfully volunteered to develop the concepts that could form around a television campaign. The broadcasting or media regulator agreed to fund the production of TV ads, and then everything else would start to fall into place. So then the bodies representing the radio sector said, well, we could run radio ads for you for free. The social media company said, we can give you credits to run ads as well. So then suddenly things began to take shape. The message of it was to stop, think and check. And that's because in 2019, as now, the whole media literacy message in public is very much informed around disinformation. So the stop, think and check was quite, it's just a phrase that we still use a lot from us. What is your media literacy tip to people? Stop, think and check is a very good tip. So it's well informed by evidence, but also very much speaking to the disinformation issue. And the thinking behind it was that in the same way, people might stop and check, where is my food coming from, or this idea of nutritional labels, because that was discussed quite a lot at the time, that you could encourage people to just take a step back from what they're doing and look at the sources, the credibility of the content they're consuming. And I hope now the ad itself will play.
It's important to you to know where your food comes from. Isn't it just as important to know where your information comes from? It's not always easy to verify what you see, read, or hear, but now there's help. Visit www.bemediasmart.ie. Stop, think, check. Be Media Smart. Brought to you by Media Literacy Ireland.
And so this was the concept that was developed by the public broadcaster, and they put great resources into it. There were some questions about the egg, which we'll come back to later, about whether the egg is relevant or not. But it was a nice, clean campaign. It's a very appealing campaign. Oh. And then for the news media, they were able to, there was content that they could cover the campaign as well, because we had a lot of media companies members. And in a way, I think if you were trying to promote media literacy, the disinformation aspect is a huge draw for the news media. They see that as a core issue. So it was maybe fortuitous for them to say, well, we'll get involved with something that we see as being directly relevant to news. If a media literacy campaign more generally about creative content or something, mightn't get that same pickup from news media. Then also we had lots of social media campaigns and different content that could be used on websites and go out across different social media platforms. And again, it was very helpful there that we had platforms as members who could not just provide ad credits, but give some basic advice on like what type of stuff is useful, what type of material should you be creating. Then radio is a very big sector in Ireland. People love listening to the radio. Local radio is very important. I think not just think in national terms, but also people also trust local radio. It's what they listen to on their way to work or on their way to picking up children from school and so on. So national and local radio and television all got involved, and they ran campaigns. And then all of this content was encouraging people to come back to the core Be Media Smart website, where this stop, think, check message was the kind of structure for it. So then advice on what people should do for under each of those banners. I think it's this campaign came together quite quickly, and then it relied very much on volunteers and the fact that organizations were members of Media Literacy Ireland. So they volunteered their ad space, they volunteered their time to create those ads in the first place. So an estimation of what all of that would cost is about 380,000, but the actual cost that went into it was just 20,000. If this was being, worked out over a long period, people might have thought of that differently and say, well, if we know we could have this value, what would we do with it? But this is just working backwards. People gave their time, people gave their valuable ad space, and we're very pleased with how it all worked out for quite a small investment. So then in 2020, which is the year of COVID, as you can imagine, the media in particular are under great stress this time. So there was an intensified need for the campaign, particularly as there was concerns about, not that I want to bring everyone back to 2020 and all the trauma with that, but there was a panic around disinformation, and particular vaccine disinformation. So that meant it made sense to continue this message around, being media smart, stop thinking and checking. But for the news media, they were under great stress and strain, and just a lot of their staff working remotely, a lot of them making far less money. So the campaign was maybe less coordinated and didn't have as much support. But there was still good coverage, television, and good engagement. We ran lots of webinars and online events around it as well. Also, what was interesting this time was that different organizations got involved, and they were using the Be Media Smart message themselves. So, for example, Age Action works is a charity that works for older people and to combat isolation with older people, and they help older people get online. And as part of their pack for older people, they added like a Be Media Smart component to think about information and to think about sources. WebWise would be the Internet Safety Center, which does a lot of modules and supports for teachers. So it was in a way being able to help them deliver the work they already do and tap it back into the campaign. So in terms of evaluation, the first year there was no evaluation really because it was all done quite quickly. This time we were able to get some questions put into a representative national survey run by Ipsos. And as you might be familiar, you know, it's not easy to ask. Ideally, media literacy, you'd be able to ask lots of questions to study things, but that's not always practical. So there was 2 questions to go in. Standard questions around campaigns are about recall. So those are the questions that were asked. And the general outlook was that, you know, the recall level was quite good for comparable campaigns. So by 2021, the campaign was developed again, but we had a revamp of the core ad.
Things aren't always what they seem. We may not always know where our information is coming from or who it's coming from. That's why it's more important than ever to verify what you see, read or hear, and to be media smart. Visit www.bemediasmart.ie. Stop, think, check. Be media smart. Brought to you by Media Literacy Ireland.
So as you can see, the egg is now replaced by a smartphone, which probably made a lot more sense to people. And this year, the campaign ran over a longer period. So it ran from April onwards. So it was being conceived of over a much longer period as well. And,
You wouldn't buy a car without knowing its history. So why would you buy a story without knowing who's telling it? Come here and I tell you. It's not always easy to verify what you see, read or hear, but now there's help. Visit www.bemediasmart.ie. Stop, think, check. Be Media Smart. Brought to you by Media Literacy Ireland, supported by your local radio station.
And so those were some of the radio ads. And I'm going to stop there to pass over to Martina, because I think that's enough to give you a sense of how it started and developed. And what we're really excited about is where it went in the past year. And thanks in part to the work with EDMO, but also all those organizations just getting involved in an even deeper way.
Okay, thanks very much, Eileen. Yeah, so that was a kind of a snapshot of how Be Media Smart started, a kind of a how it started, and now I'm going to do the how it's going kind of piece. One last point on the on that deck there on 2021, we did introduce a new feature into the website as well, which is around fact check, because fact checking was kind of just starting to kind of capture the public imagination, if you like, or certainly the media literacy world and the disinformation world. And we wanted to help the public better understand what fact checking was and where they could go to access reputable fact checking sites. So we learned a lot from 2019 right through. And what was particularly noticeable as well was the, you know, how this kind of developed an energy of its own, and the way organizations would take the stop, think, check message and develop the narrative around it. And that's exactly what we wanted to see. So in 2022, we said, okay, let's step back a little bit and see if this thing just runs by itself. And lo and behold, it didn't. So that was a really good lesson for us to learn as well, because it does need some kind of set, even though the message works for a really broad range of organizations, it still needs some kind of central coordination, some kind of central push for people to get behind. So we have continued to build on the brand. And then in 2023, we said, okay, what we'll try and do is we'll align it this year, well, last year, to Global Media and Information Literacy Week. So on the week that was run from the 24th of October, I think. So that's when we started the campaign this year. The objectives of the campaign, we were lucky this year in that we were developing a kind of an evaluation framework as well, right from the beginning, which is something we lacked in previous campaigns. So we had some clear campaign objectives this time. It was about raising awareness among the general public of the importance of knowing where information comes from, providing tips and guidance on how to check the accuracy and reliability of information, and signpost people to additional sources of support and training. And when we think of outcomes, one of the outcomes we wanted was to try and normalize this concept of lifelong learning, just to make it, okay, there's being media smart again. That's a reminder of I've got to do X, Y, and Z. In terms of the campaign elements, the campaign elements were very similar, but one thing we loosened up a little bit on was the tone of the campaign. It was always supposed to be kind of empowering and positive, but certainly when it was created in 2019, it did have that kind of slightly public announcement kind of feel to it. So what we were trying to say to partners is, you know, take the message and do whatever you want with it to make it resonate with your audience. You know how to communicate to your audience, so take the message and do that with it. Obviously, we still had the big national media campaign and phenomenal support again from TV and radio, news publications, and some of the online platforms as well. Not all of the online platforms, but that's one of the lessons that we've learned, that partners ebb and flow over the life of something like this, and that's okay. We had the Be Media Smart website again, and we did a complete refresh on that. The most exciting thing for me, I think, was the work we did with the EDMO Ireland Hub and with Ricardo Castellini de Silva. This was a community training program. It was like a pilot scheme. It was a kind of a madcap idea that, well, maybe we could, you know, we're very conscious that this kind of learning needs to be community-based. This kind of message needs to come from trusted third-party intermediaries. And just because you hear a message on national radio or television telling you to be media smart and stop, think, check, the chances are you're not going to do that, because it's about behavior change and it's about normalizing this kind of new way of operating. So the community training program was developed to try and empower community leaders, whether they were librarians or scout leaders or, you know, people working with older age groups, to empower them with the skills and the knowledge, but also the confidence to be able to run a workshop that would help, you know, give the members of the public the skills and knowledge that they needed. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And then we also did a series of 5 publicly accessible webinars across from the last week in October to the end of November as well. So that if you weren't involved or you didn't hear about the community stuff, there was still a publicly accessible piece as well. So we used the same TV and radio ads. They were delivered, everything was delivered both in Irish and English for this campaign, including the website. And we're still waiting on the final results in terms of reach, but we do expect it to be similar to kind of 2021, at least to 2021. And in terms of how we coordinated this, we invested quite a lot of time and resource this year into really coordinating the radio piece, but also the social media piece, because we were aware that there was an appetite there within local radio in Ireland. Now, maybe this is unique to Ireland, but there is a lot of trust in radio in Ireland, and particularly in local radio. And local radio is also very hungry for content, and they know what the issues are that are really bothering people on the ground. So if we can tap into that, and if we can help the local radio producers not just talk about disinformation as a problem, but then to signpost people to sources of support, we think that's a win as well. We also created a digital comms pack that had everything in it, from press release to sample tweets and sample posts to all kinds of information. There was videos and all kinds of stuff, making it really easy for partners who might only have 1 or 2 people in an organization to be able to support the campaign. Here's a selection, for example, of some of the samples that would have actually been posted. And as I said, the digital comms pack was really critical for this, because it really did hold people's hands in terms of helping them get the message out. It also helped us in terms of maintaining the kind of the integrity of the message, if you like. There was a really interesting piece done, and this was a collaboration between TikTok and the journal.ie. So that's a very well-known Irish news online publication. And this was something that they developed themselves. So, you know, MLI was kind of hands off on this, but this is exactly where we want to see this campaign going, where partners are collaborating together and they're taking the message and they're making it resonate with their audiences. So what happened here was the journal published a series of educational videos in-app that shared tips on how to spot disinformation and counter misinformation and things like that. And these videos were accessed in the TikTok app. And when a user searched for terms that TikTok had related to the kind of the Be Media Smart campaign, there was also an in-app information hub within TikTok that featured media literacy tips as well. And that campaign continues to run. And this worked really well for both TikTok and for the journal. So I'm just going to play one of the, so this is an actual journalist, as far as I know.
I'm after uncovering something fake. Everyone says that Fungi the dolphin died. He was an old dolphin, whatever. That's what they want you to believe. I've always thought that he was kidnapped. I've always thought that. I'm after finding out that the Irish government...
So I actually don't have anything to tell you about Fungi. At least not right now. Just saying. I mean, we've all wondered. But if I did have something to tell you, how would you know that you could trust me? Sometimes people might be quoting a lot of facts and figures, but they might be misrepresenting the true picture. When those videos come up in your TikTok feed, how do you know you can believe the person in the video? One way to start is by checking who they are. Are they an expert in whatever they're talking about? Are they always making wild claims, or is there anything else there that you don't trust? Can you verify any of the information yourself?
I'm after getting all this information from my sister's boyfriend's aunt's brother. It's his first cousin. He read a book about dolphins 6 years ago.
Emotional TikToks can make for powerful, brilliant content. But are they just using it to suck you in?
I'm just sick and tired of people not believing me about Fungi.
Also, listen out and make sure that it's not an ad or sponsored content.
And I've learned all this thanks to Dolphin Kidnappers Ireland.
And look, maybe you can trust the person. Maybe they're quoting loads of quality sources. Maybe they're an expert in the area. But you just need to stop and check those few elements first.
Like, I mean, you do wonder, like,
If I was going to kidnap a dolphin, 100% I'd kidnap Fungi. Not saying that I would or have.
So you can see there the difference in the kind of the tone and the approach as well, because we think it's really important. One of the challenges we have around the Be Media Smart campaign is it's a general public campaign. And anybody who has any experience in trying to change behaviour will know that you cannot change the behaviour of the general public. We're just not one big homogenous mass of people. So for Be Media Smart really to develop and move on, we believe that it's got to depend on key partners and MLI members taking that message and making it work across their own networks. So as I said, we had a complete refresh of the website as well. And the idea here was to make it easier to access the content that was there, videos. We made the top tips more prominent, and we kind of categorized them into the stop, think, check groups as well. You can go to the bemediasmart.ie website and take a look at it. We continued to have the fact check section as well, and we had a training section on it this year as well to help us promote what we were doing with the community education piece. But we did try something quite new this year as well, which was called Ask an Expert. And it's a pity now, I did want to show you that. There's no way I can do this. So the Ask the Expert section, you might recognize some of these experts. We had a kind of a Q&A. So we had these 8 experts, but we also had a bank of questions that people might ask with some of the answers there already. And then there was an opportunity for people to actually submit their own questions if they wanted to do that as well. And that was quite interesting because it received quite a lot of traffic. Not a lot of questions were submitted, but I'm hoping that's because in the range of the bank of questions that we had there, we had covered an awful lot as well. So that was the website. Now, this is the training piece. This is the bit that was really exciting this year. And it was a huge amount of work. It was a great collaboration between EDMO Ireland and Media Literacy Ireland as well. So this was developed and delivered with EDMO Ireland and Riccardo De Castellini. Riccardo did so much work on this. And he basically created the Be Media Smart training program. Now, this was aimed to build, what we tried to do here was build a kind of a network of community-based trainers who would be trained and supported to help people within their own communities recognize and value reliable and accurate information. So what we did first of all was we created this resource called A Workshop in a Box. And this was designed to provide teachers, librarians, community leaders, and other learning facilitators with the resources that they needed to deliver, literally to go in and deliver a workshop. And the aim of the workshop was about discussing best practices about how to engage with digital media content and raise awareness about disinformation and the impact that it has on society as well. So in addition to the slide deck, there was also a whole series of kind of teacher resources developed as well. And they're all on the MLI website in the training section, and they're available to anybody. And the slide deck is fully editable as well. Now, the workshop is designed to run for about 3 hours, but it is editable, so you can scale that back as well. So once that workshop in a box was ready, then we thought, okay, we know people are, if you build it, they're going to come. That doesn't work, we know that. So we needed to provide some kind of hands-on training. And we launched a call for community leaders and librarians to attend a free training session that would take them through the workshop in a box, take them through all the resources, but also provide them with some teaching skills if they weren't, experienced trainers. And we thought, okay, if we get maybe 20, 30 people signing up for this, this will be good. And over the course of 8 weeks, Riccardo delivered 9 3-hour-long training sessions, and 118 people were trained on those training sessions, which is amazing because we now have this kind of small army of community trainers out there. And the challenge for us now would be to take it from that pilot scheme and build on it. Our ask of the people who were trained was to go away and think about how they maybe could use that workshop within their own communities and to come back to us if they needed any additional support. So a very quick highlight of some results. In terms of social media, the impressions across all platforms is 81,000. The reach was 41,000, but the big headline here is that TikTok journal partnership got 6.4 million video views, which is just phenomenal. And that just shows that by letting partners do their own thing, the reach can really be extended. In terms of radio, the investment we put into the coordination around the radio this year really paid off. 35 stations broadcast the ad and posted on their social channels. 17 did editorial, and 6 stations covered the campaign on news and programming as well. Now, we're still working out the full reach of this. So if we were doing this session maybe in a month's time, I'd be able to give you even more detailed information on this, but we will put it on the website as well. As I said, this might be unique to Ireland, but definitely there is something there to be tapped into in terms of local radio. The training program, as I said, over 118 community leaders completed the training. There was really broad geographic spread, and we carried out surveys after each session, and 84% of participants found that the training resources were relevant and useful, and 95% agreed that their knowledge had improved and their skills as a trainer had improved. But most importantly, we are now seeing community workshops popping up. So this was the first one. It took place on the 18th of January. Now, we had nothing to do with this. So this was somebody who was trained, had access to the resources, and they just sent a little email there at the beginning of January to say, hey, I'm doing this workshop, can you help me promote it? And that obviously we did through our newsletter and things like that. So in terms of some hard data, you can see here that the campaign started in late October. So we were really pleased to see that there was a statistically significant increase in unprompted awareness for the campaign, especially in November and December. So you can see in November there, it was 23%. And if you take it back, so the baseline that was set in September 23 was 15. So that's quite a significant increase. And just for context, any kind of public awareness campaign like this targeting the general public, anything in the high teens is seen as a really, really good result. So we're delighted with that kind of result, but we do need to kind of work on it as well and build on the momentum. Couple of lessons. There are 2 slides here, and they're kind of things I wish I knew in 2019. The first is ensure enough planning time. Really, if you are going down the road of doing a kind of a national campaign with national media and other elements into it, you're looking at a 9-month planning time minimum would be my advice. If you're doing a refresh of a campaign, you could probably do it in 6 months. The second thing is know your audience and the channels to reach them. And this is something we didn't. When we started in 2019, it was just put it out there and we'll see how it goes. But the more you know about the audience, the better you can tailor your message, and trying to get as much insight as possible on who they trust, who they're influenced by, you know, what the kind of the triggers might be to help them improve learning behaviors. All of that kind of stuff is really, really critical, because essentially what you're talking about here is behavior change, and that doesn't happen in isolation. You need the insight, and you need the kind of the longitudinal research then to track change over time. In terms of messaging, invest time and resources into creating simple messaging that's easily shared. But certainly one piece of advice I would be giving is also being relaxed with your branding, because if the objective is to kind of increase skills and knowledge, then it doesn't matter how that happens. It doesn't matter who gets credit for it. The thing is to reach the people with the message in a way that they're going to respond to. Obviously, when you've got big brands coming together, there's a lot of kind of tricky negotiations around that too. But this is why you need to really put the effort into partnership management. And please don't underestimate the effort that is required for that, because it'll all be going tickety-boo until you're 10 days out from campaign launch, and then people really start to sit up and they want to double check that press release and they want to know who exactly is saying what. So there is a lot of time, but it's time really well spent. Make it easy for partners to get involved. The big hit for us this year was having that digital comms pack. What we found is most partners are really keen to be involved. They just need to be told. And as long as you can align your ask of them to what their kind of core priorities or their skills are, it will work. I think we run into trouble when we're trying to make asks of organizations where it's going to cost them a lot of time or money, or it's something they're not familiar with doing. The other top tip here is don't mention media literacy, because nobody understands it. It's fine in our circle and in our community, but don't put it in a press release, because a presenter will say, so what's media literacy? And then your 90 seconds is spent explaining what media literacy is, and the campaign message gets lost. For something like this, you also kind of need to be prepared for a little bit of pushback, particularly online. And I think don't be afraid of that, because when I say pushback, it's like we've seen some of our partners that'll be promoting the Be Media Smart, Stop, Think, Check message, you know, make sure you're getting accurate and reliable information. And then there'll be people, you know, keyboard warriors online going, but you're the biggest pushers of disinformation. Why should we believe you? And in a way, I think when you're getting that pushback, it's interesting, because it means the message is getting out there. There will be people that the message will never land with, and that's okay. That's not who we're trying to reach anyway. We're trying to reach the people who are in the kind of the middle of the road area. Build evaluation into the planning process. It's taken us a couple of years to do this, but it's well worth it, because even when we do satisfaction surveys after events or after training or whatever, we've structured questions in a different way so that we can build a kind of a really useful set of data that will help us improve the campaign in the future as well. And the last one is there's just experiment. You know, there's sometimes the most interesting and effective things come really out of left field. So don't be afraid to experiment. I think that's us out of time. Did I go over? So I'm a couple of minutes over.
You're all right, don't worry. Thank you very much. So we will move on then to Zara. So I'm delighted to welcome and introduce Zara Mommerency from Mediawijs and BELUX. She's a staff member at Mediawijs, which is the Belgian Flemish knowledge base for digital media literacy in Flanders and Brussels, with a focus particularly on critical thinking and information and news literacy in an educational context. So Zara, over to you to talk about your campaign.
Okay, hi, I am Zara from Mediawijs, as Sally already told you. First of all, I would like to thank Eileen and Martina for the presentation of their very successful campaign. As the last in row, I hope I can still add some new ideas, of course. Actually, today I was invited to share my experiences on the I Doubt campaign that we did with EDMO BELUX, but actually Mediawijs, on behalf of BELUX, was also involved into other campaigns the last year. So let me first go through these as well, because I think it's also really nice inspiration for you. So let's see if I can easily, yeah. So we had 3 campaigns, being the first one is called the Spooky Tours. And actually it was a collaboration with the KWB. It's a socio-cultural organization. It's a family organization. And actually they made a kind of an offline campaign, being hikes with children or with families. And we provided online tips and the webinar on how to talk with or within your family about this information. So we did it for families in Flanders and Brussels. And the key message being, don't ignore questions about this information that your children see across the internet, not because you're maybe not yourself on a platform, but we give tips on how you can talk about this information. So actually every year, the KWB, they focus on a social relevant topic. And in 2022, it was the Spooky Tours. And the idea is that they do a hike, because the hiking concept, it grew out of Corona, because then you could do things with your family only in bubbles. And actually it was really a great success. So it became a yearly thing. And in 2021, they did it on polarization. And now in 2022, they wanted to do it on fake news. And the idea was that during the week of Halloween, you could actually do a sort of a hike all over Flanders and Brussels municipalities. And while hiking or walking, you could listen to a horror story, like a spooky story on fake news. So we made 2 stories together with the KWB, the wolf and the lost goat, and then Zavros the trader. And the idea was that while hiking, you could there were special experience boards that were placed on each tour, and they featured a task or a game that they could do. And in that way the participants were challenged to reflect on assumptions or on the speed with which we consume information, with which we choose sometimes a side or direction when we hear something or see something online. Also on how easily we believe online information. And for example, the middle one here is like an exercise that children have to test if you can or not can sit and then get up without using your hands. And then the idea is that you can talk or start a conversation with your family or friends while walking about if you always believe immediately what people say, or that you maybe should check or do it for yourself before believing. And in that way, we really wanted to like get them to think and to start a conversation on how we think about information and disinformation as well. And so our role, aside from the audio stories that we made together with KWB, we also gave tips. We made it in the form of an online page on their website and how to talk about fake news with your children. And we also organized a webinar for parents afterwards who still had questions for us. Then the second campaign we did, we made some explainer videos with Hooray. And Hooray is actually a major content creator agency in Flanders. And their core business is actually guiding influencers in gaining and retaining followers. But with this collaboration with us, they wanted to provide guidance on identifying and combating fake news and hate speech, and make content creators and influencers actually more media literate. So together with them, we made some videos to really create awareness about fake news and hate speech. So here you can see that we did some videos on what do you do as a content creator when you shared fake news and you want to restore your error? How do you recognize fake news? What is hate speech? How should you react when someone attacks you online? Some basic facts on the law around hate speech and what you cannot say online. And the interesting part here is actually that before we created the reels on TikTok and Instagram, that we first in stories, we asked the influencer what they wanted to know. Or for example, like, how do you respond to haters? And then we asked them if they did it and how they did it, and they could just react in DMs. And in that way, we knew what content we wanted to bring in the reels. So it was actually a great success. These are some views from Instagram, but on TikTok, we had a lot of views as well. So in that way, we reached an audience, being influencers that we normally don't reach. So for us, that was as well a very successful campaign. But now we come to the I Doubt campaign that I wanted to tell you something more about. I don't know if everybody here has already heard of it, because we did do some promo in the different EDMO meetings we already had. But if you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to surf to idoubt.eu. idoubt.eu is actually an online campaign. It's on disinformation. And well, we enrolled it in 2 countries, being Belgium and Luxembourg, in 3 regions, being Flanders, the French-speaking part of Belgium, and Luxembourg. And then we did it in 4 languages, so French, Dutch, Luxembourgish, and English, because we also wanted to reach a more international community. Our target audience being adults, but especially vulnerable adults who doubt the reliability of news and news media or online information. And actually what we really wanted to tell them or what we really wanted to say with this campaign was that it's okay to doubt, about online information you see, also about the news you hear, that there are legitimate reasons to doubt online information, but also that you can really do something about it. So yeah, these are just some screenshots, but you can just surf to the website yourself if you want. It's a very easy and accessible website, but I'll tell more about that later. But the first thing, of course, in the whole process was that we wanted to know for what audience we wanted to bring or to make a campaign. And our feeling already was that there is a lot of content and there are a lot of campaigns on disinformation for children and younger people. We reach a lot of young people through education. We also give a lot of trainings to youth workers and youth welfare workers on how to deal with fake news and disinformation. We also reach adults through trainings we give to people who work with people with disabilities. We reach civil servants. We work with people in adult information that we also gave trainings to. So whom were we at that point really missing? Like, what are the people that we cannot reach easily? And that actually, it's still a very big group. It's elderly people, but it's also low literate people. In a way, it's people who don't speak Dutch easily, so the non-natives, people in a poorer situation. So we were still like searching whom we really wanted to reach with this campaign. So what did we do? We actually tried to analyze the needs and try to see what gaps there were through focus groups. We did with our own EDMO BELUX researcher team and with the fact checkers. And we asked them what useful insights came from research, who they know and they think are more susceptible to disinformation. We did an exercise on do's and don'ts from other media literacy campaigns on disinformation from all over Europe, what works, what doesn't. We also did some interviews with social workers and with LIGO's, so that's the adult educational system for low literate people. And we asked them what they already did within their organizations on the themes of news and information, what they thought that their pupils need. We asked them if the social workers are seen as people that are trusted to ask questions to. So we really asked for their experience and we tried mapping the needs of the more vulnerable people in that way. My colleague also did an inquiry at a reflection group on depolarization, and also they told us that there is really one target group that's completely out of sight in all actions about this information, and that are the vulnerable adults, being the poor people, non-natives, low literate people, and the elderly people. So we started to know whom we wanted to target in our campaign, but it's still really hard to know how to reach them. So we started thinking about, okay, what type of campaign do we want to bring to reach them? We went for a call to action campaign, being we want people to go to a really easy website or a really easy page and read the content, but content also had to be really brief and short in a kind of video way, or maybe we wanted to use text and bullets. We didn't want to make too much content, because if you make a too big website, then they just are lost in translation. So we started thinking about, okay, we maybe have to find some easy key messages. I'll go into that later, but the idea was, like I already said, it's okay to doubt, but you have to know you can do something about it. You can just do some easy checks for yourself, and maybe that will make you less doubtful about the news and the information you come by online. Of course, within the EDMO BELUX, we didn't have that much of human and budgetary resources. We worked together with a communication agency of Mediawijs, that's the partner for the French-speaking part of Belgium in our hub. And they had 20 days only for making the content with us, for the technical side of the website, for the visual identity, to input the content on the website, for the broadcasting and dissemination. So we really had to see what is possible within the budgets, and then we had to be realistic, and we couldn't make a lot of new videos. We didn't have the money for videos and not a lot of time either. I'll come to the timing later. So there is already also a lot of really nice material online. So why should we make new things? Of course, we didn't have printing budget either. So that's also why we, in the end, chose for an online campaign. Although we were from the start really sure about reaching more people through social media, so that an online campaign would be better. But for the whole process, we had, I think, less than half a year, because in June we started with the interviews and the focus groups and the studies with our within the EDMO BELUX hub to see on what target audience we wanted to work. Then we had the summer for development and layout, for the logo, visual identity, and then the outro was in November. So if we would, like, now we made the campaign very in a very short period. So I think if we would have more time and more resources, we could still, and we hope to do that maybe in the next round of EDMO, to still make some more content. We also thought about, do we want a collaboration maybe with our public broadcasters in Belgium or with RTL in Luxembourg to have a bigger reach? But we chose not to, because it would have maybe have an opposite effect. to our target audience because sometimes they already mistrust the public broadcaster and also mainstream media. So we thought if they support our campaign, that it could have an opposite effect. So in the end, we chose not to do that. Then by now we already knew what we wanted to bring, and now it was the question of how do we want to bring our information on the website. So of course, we had to keep in mind that we have to have a very easy and accessible homepage so people don't get lost. So we really made it short and simple. It's just a 2-pager website. Then we also thought about using the right tone of voice because we didn't want to be too pedantic and to tell them this is what you need to know about this information. We really wanted to use their words. We wanted to show that we understood the possible struggle of, indeed, there is nothing clear anymore. There is an abundance of information that can be stressful. It's normal that you feel confused. There often is no clear distinction between facts and opinions. So we really wanted to show them that it's okay to doubt. And we wanted to bring that in a positive message, a bit like the Obama, yes, you can kind of campaigning. We said, yes, you can do something about it. You can train your skills to navigate in the abundance of information online. And we did that in really hands-on tips, in 4 tips. I'll come to that later as well. We made it very visual and we used a mascot to make it a bit cute and not too serious. And as already said, we wanted not to be too pedantic. So we chose not for a top-down idea of, for example, this is an e-learning module. And if you follow this thing, if you follow this course, you know everything you need to know. We didn't want to do it like that. So we chose for a very simple messages. So these were the 4 key messages, but the idea being dare to talk to someone you trust, dare to search for more online sources, dare to take your time. Everything goes really fast online, but you can just take your time to reflect, and also dare to ask for help from experts. The idea is that every of the 4 messages or 4 tips has some more smaller and accessible hands-on tips that they could do. So if you want to talk to someone you trust, how do you do it? Try to not go into an attack, but try to keep on the dialogue, or always stay open for other perspectives. Look for different opinions. Maybe your opinion is not the only thing in the discussion. So stuff like that. And this is what we did for every of the 4 key messages. So dare to talk, dare to search, dare to take your time, dare to ask. And then we had some more really easy tips. So how did we then start to roll out the campaign once the website was more or less finished? Of course, we set up a social media communication plan, or Mediawijs came up with a media communication plan. And the idea was that for 1 month, like once a week, we would post one of the 4 tips on Facebook and on Instagram. And we also did some paid advertising. So not a lot. I think it was around 400 euros per language for a whole month. So and in that way, we wanted to reach a bigger public because we spread it on our own social media platforms. And there we reached a lot of professionals, but not the broader audience. So we asked our communication specialists at Mediawijs and at Mediawijs to target a broader audience. So we couldn't really, you cannot target on Facebook vulnerable adults, of course. So we asked them to just try some promotion. I'm not sure myself how they did it, but if anybody has questions on that, you can always ask me through email, and then I can ask our own social media team. But what we also did, and what was actually very successful, is we asked to all the organizations, the social cultural organizations and our networks to support the campaign. And the idea was that they could actually support the campaign on the website, and then they could choose to just download the visuals and to spread it on their own social media whenever they wanted. Because from other campaigns, we knew that if they have to do it on a certain date and then they don't have time for that in their own social media planning, then they don't do it and it gets lost. So we were like, you can share it whenever you want, in the way you want. We just give you, you can download the visuals here. But they could also endorse, and in that way they could share their logo with us, and we would put them on the website as well. And then they shared it within their own network as well. And so this is for the English I Doubt website. We only had 4 hubs who endorsed the campaign. But for example, in Flanders, we had almost 30 organizations who in the end shared our campaign. And they also, a lot of them are in education for adults, or are organizations who are really working in the field, so who really reach our end target audience. So that was actually a big success. And also they told us that they use the website I Doubt a lot in their courses or with their audiences. So that's about yes, the impact that they told us about. If I want to give some more insights on like the reach that we had with the website, for the Dutch website Ik Twijfel, I checked the numbers in the beginning of January, and then we had 8,000 views. So that's in 2 months, and those numbers aren't super big, but of course we still have the 3 other websites as well. And the thing is, we could also see through the Google Analytics that they stayed around 1 minute and 12 seconds on a website, and that's actually not quite bad. It doesn't look really long, but it is okay. But of course, the impact now, like, it's still running, and we're still sharing it in our networks. Also, if we give trainings, we're still encouraging everybody to use I Doubt or Ik Twijfel with their audiences. So the thing is, that's a bit of a long tail effect, of course. We also had some visibility in Knak magazine, for example. That's one of the bigger Belgian news brands, or also in some local magazines. We had interviews about, okay, what should you do when you doubt? So in that way as well, we try to reach a bigger audience. Let me see. Yes, then I get actually to the end, and those are the lessons we've learned. And then I think it's actually funny, that's a bit the same as what Martina and Eileen said, that you really have to know your audience. And even then, we noticed it's still super hard to make content, but we really asked in focus groups, and in the field we did interviews. We really asked around how we could reach the audience, and I think that was very interesting and insightful for us as well. Also, what we know from research, and that was in the research that our partners in the BELUX Hub did, was also very interesting. So it was really a collaboration of a lot of insights. Keep it simple is also what I think Eileen or Martina said, that it's better to not have a lot of information than to have an abundance of information, because then people just get lost. Yeah, we really also, the tone of voice for us was very important. So we didn't want to be too top down. And then, as I already said, we involved everybody in our network in the fields to just reach the biggest possible audience.
Look, I think that the messages that you've and the tips you've both shared from both campaigns are really, really useful. Back again to working with partners, planning ahead of time. I mean, I hear that 6 months, 9 months kind of minimal lead-ins for these kinds of campaigns. Evaluation, knowing your audience before you start. This is all, the kind of advice that we hope is useful for people. I know that Zara and Martina and Eileen are really happy if you contact them, and happy to share resources. So thank you very much for your time.